From Southern California, this is The Circle of Insight, a show about everything in psychology. Hear the latest in news and views on psychology. Our motto is simple: wherever there is psychology involved, we are there. And now, here's your host of The Circle of Insight, Carlos Vasquez.
From wherever you are around the world, welcome and thank you for joining us. Today we have a very special show. We're going to be exploring forgotten Hollywood, forgotten history. That's right, we're going back to the days of Basil Rathbone, Peter Lorre, and the rest of the gang with our special guest, Manny Pacheco. Thank you very much for joining us at The Circle, Manny.
Mal, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
It's Manny Pacheco's extensive career in radio and television has spanned over 3 decades in Southern California. He's hosted the Emmy-nominated In Studio, has written numerous articles on performing, and currently works in commercial acting, video voiceover, and radio broadcasting. Thank you very much again, Manny, for being here. This is going to be an exciting topic. Forgotten Hollywood. It brings back so many memories.
And that's my goal, is to not only bring back memories, but what I try to do is I try to tie Hollywood history with American history and what I metaphorically call Hollywood in Vine moments. The idea that in a Ken Burns style, tell great stories. And what I use is the character actors whose names appear below the title of the film. So, because my feeling is Humphrey Bogart and John Wayne and Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, these are all folks that are going to be remembered. But we are a generation or two from watching Casablanca or Stagecoach or It's a Wonderful Life, and you see these fine actors, you see Claude Rains in Casablanca, and you go, oh, I know who that is. And then you look at the screen, you go, that's and then you forget. And I think we're a generation or two. Our children are going to forget who these fine actors are. And many of them appeared in over 200 films, appeared with great actors. And what I discovered is that they got great American stories to tell.
Actually, you just brought up a question in my mind right now. I don't know where else it would pop in, but are children forgetting about these people? But you said your children might forget these people in the next 20 or 30 years. I'm seeing a little bit of a weird comeback in a strange way. I see The Great Gatsby came back, the movie. I know a lot of people are really happy if you have teenagers. The hoodies seem to be disappearing, and now they're switching to the suits. Do you think maybe this lost period of Hollywood is coming back?
Well, if you look at Turner Classic Movies and what they do in their outreach, they try to reach out through their not only their film series, but then they've got their film festivals, they've got their cruises, and what they're seeing is that a younger group of folks are they're finding out, they're researching and learning about the silent era and Hollywood's golden age. And I get asked this question a lot: how many people? What constitutes Hollywood's golden age? And to me, it was the beginning of really the time when MGM and Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers became really top studios, and the talkies emerged. So from about 1927, talkies.
What is that?
That's when actually you could hear their voices.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to the silent era.
Hollywood lingo, I think.
So from 1927 to about 1963, when the movie stars themselves started producing their own movies, folks like Burt Lancaster and Humphrey Bogart and John Wayne, they formed their own film studios. Now, that was okay because they were under the tutelage of people like Louis B. Mayer and Jack Warner and the folks at Columbia and the folks at Paramount. But later on, as folks became their own producers, I think the golden age became more tarnished. We got rid of the idea that the story was really what the topic should be about. And what ended up happening is that folks concentrated on the idea that how good does the movie look? When back in the days of Hollywood's golden age, it was always about the story. And I contend that even today, the movies that are nominated for Oscars have to do with how good is the story. If the story's not that good, it doesn't matter how good it looks.
Do you think they really look at that when they pick the Oscars or the Academy? And by the way,
yes.
In February, we're going to have Manny back to pick some of the best movies for 2014. You think they do then?
I think that at Oscar time, it's always about the writers. And all you have to do is look at who wins. When you see a Matthew McConaughey, or you see a Jane Fonda, or you see any actor who wins an Academy Award, the first people they congratulate or they thank is the writers. Because without a good writer, you're going to end up, look, you can have Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty in a movie, and you're going to think it's going to be a blockbuster, and it turns out to be Ishtar, because the writing's not that good.
Sorry, Ishtar. We go back a little bit here and explore the 30s and I'm not 30s and the 40s, 30 and 40-year-olds in the Turner Classic Movie genre. Do you think they're trying to reconnect with their parents because maybe they heard these movies in the background when they were 8 or 9 years old, and now they were watching them?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but what I can do is the reason why I wrote these wonderful books that tell these great stories is because I did connect with my grandmother. My grandmother, who was in her 80s by the time I started watching classic films. She loved the horror movie genre. I liked the women's pictures with Claude Rains and Bette Davis. But either way, when she became confined to her house, I would go visit her after I go, to my studies at UCLA, and I would end up sitting and watching movies with her. And even though there was a 50-year difference between us, those years melted away, and we had something to talk about. We had the stories to tell. We could talk about the actors, and it's a wonderful tribute to my grandmother. And for my first book, I dedicated the Forgotten Hollywood, Forgotten History to my grandmother because she really influenced the humanities in my life. My parents always influenced education, but my grandmother said music, film, television. These are the things that are going to round you out and make you a better individual. And you know what? I have to agree with her.
Yeah, you turned out great. Kudos to your parents and grandparents. Once again, here's the book. We're actually going to delve right into it now. So, on the Forgotten Hollywood, Forgotten History, I know there's a lot of actors in both books. I read both of them. I can't remember which actors in what book, but so we're going to start exploring some of these actors. Some of these are actually chosen by our audience. They have recommended, hey, please have them speak about, let's right now start off. Claude Rains was one. One lady actually told me that her view of the afterlife came about from Claude Rains movies, which I thought was fascinating.
Claude Rains happened to be Bette Davis's favorite acting partner. Which,
really?
You can do a lot worse than having Bette Davis on your side. Claude Rains, a lot of folks back in about 1960, 1970 would have picked Walter Brennan as the premier character actor of his day. But in fact, if you talk to younger folks today and actually actors who have been influenced by getting into acting, they point to people like Claude Rains and Spencer Tracy, actors who were very, very believable on screen, who were not the prototypical good-looking types. And what makes Claude Rains such a remarkable actor is that he always was willing to play the villain. And he was able to play what I consider the status quo. So that in his own revolutionary way, he was able to tell the audiences, this is what happens when you stay the course, and this is what happens when you brave the new frontier. And he was able to. Now, some people call that typecasting, but the bottom line is that Claude Rains really had a remarkable career because of this wonderful idea of typecasting that he embraced completely.
Do we know who was his favorite actor or actress to work with?
Oh, Bette Davis. I mean, they did. It was very mutual. Yeah, they really loved working together. In fact, Bette Davis wanted to marry him.
In real life?
In real life.
Holy cow!
She loved Claude Rains. She loved working with him, and
not a bad deal.
No, he's a remarkable, and he had that wonderful voice. I mean, all you have to do is watch The Invisible Man, where you don't see him at all. And all you hear is that fabulous, remarkable, gravelly voice. And it's Claude Rains. It's wonderful.
That is fascinating.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
How about Basil Rathbone? Yeah, Basil Rathbone is one of my favorites.
Well, number one, I will tell you, Basil Rathbone was not British. He was South African.
You're ruining Sherlock for me here.
Now, let me tell you what a wonderful man Basil Rathbone was. He was an accomplished man with a sword. And he never won a sword fight on screen because he always played the villain. He went up against Tyrone Power and Errol Flynn and Danny Kaye. Always lost. Leslie Howard. Always lost, but he was always the better swordsperson in real life. So what he would do is he would teach his tricks, his techniques to the hero as a favor to the director. And the actors loved him for that. And of course, then he would lose the fight on screen. So he always played the villain. But he was so beloved in Hollywood that when they came up with the idea of first, Baron Frankenstein, the man to replace Colin Clive in the Frankenstein series, and then later, Sherlock Holmes, all of the actors uniformly really went to Universal and to 20th Century Fox and said, you know, the man that has to play Sherlock Holmes is the beloved Basil Rathbone. And he went from becoming a foil, there's the trick there, from foil to sleuth.
Do we know, so he was chosen, did he audition for it? Did he just get taken?
He was the first choice. I don't know that he auditioned, he may have, but he was really the first choice. And to his credit, not even thinking of himself, he says, I will only do it if you can hire my friend, my really good friend, Nigel Bruce, to play Dr. Watson.
You read my mind because I was trying to ask about Nigel Bruce.
And here's the best part of the whole thing. When Nigel Bruce passed on in 1953, Basil Rathbone never again played Sherlock Holmes. That's how close they were. He's a really good man. But on screen, you just love to hate him.
Well, Sherlock, I love to love him. Yeah, he was great. Nigel Bruce, he was older too, right? Nigel Bruce.
Actually, they were roughly the same age.
Oh, right,
but you know,
right.
prematurely gray, and he died relatively young. Actually,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
great actor. But he's one of those forgotten great character actors. You know him as Dr. Watson. You can point to him on screen and say, "Hey, that's Dr. Watson." You ask somebody who was it, and you go, "That's and they can't think of the name. Well, we're happy today to mention it was Nigel Bruce.
That's right. And Basil Rathbone, I think, was also he was a stereotypical Sherlock Holmes from the pictures. Oh, I can't remember the artist's name that drew Sherlock Holmes. He became really famous. Depiction of Sherlock and what he looked like, and wow,
Right.
Rathbone looks exactly like him.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
I think most people, when you ask film aficionados who their favorite Sherlock Holmes are, and believe me, the lineage of Sherlock Holmes stretches back to John Barrymore and moves all the way to Robert Downey Jr. But to a person, most people will say that Basil Rathbone was the quintessential Sherlock Holmes.
I agree with that. Actually, you touched upon somebody I do want to discuss a little bit, and I think it was John Barrymore. Is he the brother of Lionel?
Lionel Barrymore. John Barrymore didn't have as big a career in Hollywood's golden age, so I wrote about Lionel. But I will tell you that John Barrymore was huge in the silent era. He was known as the Great Profile. He literally had to be filmed a certain profile because his profile was considered deemed perfect by directors.
Really?
And he kind of read his own clippings and believed that. But the Barrymore name, if you think about it, is really Hollywood royalty. You have John Barrymore, the brother Lionel, his older brother, his older sister Ethel, who won an Academy Award for None But the Lonely Heart. And for our younger audience, those folks who remember Drew Barrymore is actually the grandchild of John Barrymore. So the Barrymore name is really golden in Hollywood.
She has a lot of acting
Yes.
in her background. Interesting.
And Lionel Barrymore, I write about him. In fact, we're going to be doing a documentary on him because of the idea that he was a pioneer in the fight against disability and disease. And I say that because about 1937, he was about 62 years old. He had just made really one of the finest pictures of his career. It's called Captain's Courageous, Rudyard Kipling. It still holds up. I saw it on the big screen. It is absolutely fabulous. Spencer Tracy, Freddie Bartholomew, John Carradine, Melvin Douglas, Mickey Rooney. I mean, the list goes on and on. Great action film. Lionel Barrymore, about 10 days after the filming of that movie, broke his hip. So he went to a doctor. The doctor says the hip will heal. However, I discovered you have degenerative advanced arthritis. Within a year, you're going to be on crutches. Within 2 years, you're going to be in a wheelchair.
Oh, wow.
However, Lionel Barrymore not only had a broken hip, not only had advanced degenerative arthritis, but he had something else that was very special. He had a lifetime contract at MGM, and he hobbled into Louis B. Mayer's studio and office and said, "Look, I expect you to honor that contract till the day I die, because I signed that contract. And you know, to Louis B. Mayer's credit, he honored that contract, and audiences accepted Lionel Barrymore in a wheelchair in the Dr. Kildare series as an active doctor, as the villain, Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, Key Largo, Duel in the Sun. I mean, the list just goes on and on. He made a litany of movies that are considered even better than the movies he made when he could walk. And here's two things that come out of this. Number one, I don't think the best years of our lives with the double amputee Harold Russell could have been cast if it hadn't been that audiences accepted Lionel Barrymore in a wheelchair. That's number one. And number two, Helen Keller, who, believe it or not, couldn't hear and couldn't see, went to the movies. She loved the idea that Lionel Barrymore was in a wheelchair and that audiences accepted him. She wrote to her good friend Eleanor Roosevelt and said, "Our time has come to fight the good fight against disability, against disease." Audiences, from a psychological point of view, have no problem with Lionel Barrymore. Talk to your husband about this. Well, her husband was in a wheelchair. Franklin D. Roosevelt suffered from infantile paralysis. We know it as polio, had formed the March of Dimes campaign, and FDR had this wonderful idea. Well, we're not going to fight against advanced degenerative arthritis. We're not going to fight Helen Keller's cause, but we are going to fight against polio, and I'm going to champion with Hollywood on my birthday and raise money through the March of Dimes program. And guess what? Within 10 years, they raised enough money so that Dr. Salk could eradicate polio in the United States. It is a remarkable story, and that's a story we need to tell in a documentary.
Absolutely, which he is going to do. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the documentary in part 3. So you don't want to miss that. We're going to talk about the Sony situation. Did it ever happen before where we actually shut down a movie because of societal pressure? We're going to find out more from Manny Pacheco in part 3. Part 2, though, we're going to talk about some more actors and actresses. We're going to find out Manny's favorite actors, character actors and actresses in the past. We got a couple more that I need to finish up on so I can put closure in my life. And in part 2, we're also going to find out, how did Hollywood win World War II? That's going to be fascinating. Thank you so much again, Manny, for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us as well. Remember, wherever there's psychology involved, even in Hollywood, we are there. See you next time, everyone.